Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the NextStepSupport webinar series for our session on online networking. Thanks for joining us here today. We've got a lot of students here and graduates joining us, so thanks for taking the time to be here. We also have a very great panel here to help us with questions and queries and some observations in this very odd and uncertain time you find yourselves in, and hopefully we can provide some practical advice for you guys out there. First of all, I'll introduce our panelists. We have Gabby Sewell from Marshall McLennan, we have Orion Whiteman from Experian, and we have Emma Jenkins from KPMG. And just so you know who you're getting your advice from, and my name is Rory Kavanagh, I'm one of the editors with the NextStepSupport. Just so you know who you're getting your advice from, we'll just ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So Gabby, would you like to just give a quick overview of yourself, your job, and you do?
Yeah, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Gabby. I'm an early careers recruiter for Marshall McLennan companies. So I help with the recruitment for 3 of our businesses, so Marsh, Mercer and Guy Carpenter, and we recruit for apprentices, interns, graduates and placement students.
Thanks very much. Oriane?
Hi guys, so my name's Oriane and I'm one of the senior talent acquisition partners at Experian. What that means is basically I focus on all early careers recruitment for the UK and I graduated myself 5 years ago, so I have a bit of a unique perspective that kind of understand both sides of the field. So really excited to be here today and help you guys on that journey.
Thanks very much, Oriane. Emma? Sorry, Emma, I'm just a slight bit of problem there with the sound. Or is it just me? Sorry, both.
I think she might have dropped her headset.
It's no problem at all. No problem at all. Emma will rejoin us in a second there. These things happen. As we were just discussing before the session started, the whole world of online networking is full of pitfalls like this. We didn't actually stage that one, by the way. That's just that actually happened. So prior to lockdown, prior to the current situation, Emma, how are you?
Is that any better? Can you hear me?
It is. It is.
Excellent. There we go. Yeah, so my name's Emma Jenkins. I'm a student recruitment officer for KPMG. So we have all range of opportunities from apprenticeships, first year opportunities, summer internships, placement years, graduate schemes, and we recruit for all the different business areas that we have at KPMG. So I'm quite similar to one of the other panelists. I had a placement year when I was at university not so long ago, a graduate scheme also, and in my career I've moved across to KPMG. So hopefully a bit of a view from both sides.
Great, thanks so much, Emma. And just before we had that little hitch there, I was just saying to Oriane and to Gabby that before the current situation we find ourselves in with the pandemic, obviously the whole online networking, virtual interviews was a growing part of the industry, but now I suppose it pretty much is the industry at the moment. So I know if I could just get your kind of your thoughts on the last few months and how you've seen your own work evolve and some of the things that you're now doing differently in terms of how you're dealing with candidates. Oriane, maybe start with yourself.
Yeah, I think it's probably clear that this pandemic has changed the entire way all businesses are going to work. I think the reality is we are going to be seeing a lot more, whether it's events, assessment centres, interviews, a lot of activity online. And I think pre-COVID, people were a little bit more sceptical. I think they were less comfortable. But I think now it's becoming the norm, and it's really nice to actually see people be really confident and quite, I suppose, prime example here, all the students signed up and engaged. It's a great opportunity, especially for social mobility. So I'm all for it.
Okay, Gabby?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a big learning curve for a lot of employers, I think. But it's interesting that we can reach a lot more students than we could have before. Like all of the careers fairs that we're going to for a lot of universities, they're now all online, and you get like a little bit more contact with students in that they can have your email address as well if they have any follow-up questions and they decide they are really interested in. They've got like all of your details ready. So yeah, it's definitely like changed a lot, but there's a lot more opportunity within that as well, I think.
And Emma, as Gabby just alluded to there, like what are some of the benefits that you're seeing from the online working world? I know virtual fairs, well, they lack obviously, that kind of vital physical touch and physical presence, but the whole thing about, some people are more comfortable dealing digitally with employers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for our recruitment process, one of our final stages is what we call a launch pad, which is a 200 to 300 candidate assessment day. So very face-to-face, very intense for the one day. And that's had to completely change virtually. And it's definitely made all of us think on our feet and how we can change that. But some of the feedback we've had from the interviewers and the students have said, actually, it calms the situation. You don't feel as tense and you feel like they can get their personality across a bit more as to who they really are in those interviews, because they're in their own home settings. So whether it be in an interview situation or just generally in networking, I think that the feedback so far from what everyone's experienced is they can get more of themselves across, which ourselves and I'm sure many others, at the end of the day, we want individuals, you know, not just a box ticking exercise. We want real people in these organisations. So it's good getting that across.
And I'll just stay with you for a second. I suppose just the phrase online networking, it's 2 words. Our whole life is built around networks, you know, personal networks, family networks we play sport with, networks we socialise with. But it's quite nebulous, I suppose, in terms of how do you go about building a network online? There are so many platforms out there, you know. So if someone is maybe here and they've had their internship cancelled, or they've had their grad program deferred or cancelled, and maybe they're not sure that they're entering the right area that they want to work in, how do you go about, what are the first few steps you would take to maybe building an effective online network? Or, you know, let's face it, we all have digital platforms. How do you start kind of harmonizing them to build your network?
Yeah, I think attending the webinar today is a prime example of it. You know, people are thinking already, how can I get some more information and see where that can take me in my career? Webinars like this are great because there's going to be multiple employers on and you can get lots of information. Yes, okay, some of it might be a quite high touch point, but at least you're getting those first steps towards where you want to find out some more information. KPMG, we host a lot of one-to-one sessions, whether it just be skills sessions or more about our business areas. So they're a good opportunity. They're all becoming virtual now, so it doesn't matter where you're based. And if anything, there's more opportunity to get involved now because you don't have to attend in person. You can attend 10 sessions a day if you wanted to. Getting involved where you can and getting that information across. Another one I'd probably say is social media. So with our platforms on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, there are real people behind those. So getting your questions asked across there and get involved where you can with socials. I think it's something that a lot of young people and students have in their roles. A lot of people have accounts on these, so to really utilise them. I think we have a freeze on the other half as well.
I think I'll add to your point as well, Emma. I think that's a really key element, but it's also realising actually who is best in your network. So you want to get the balance between connecting with, yes, employers, people like us, we're sharing regular posts, tips, jobs, anything we think that's of value, we push it out to our network. So definitely connect with employers and the people behind that are doing the recruitment process, but also consider people in your immediate network. So think about some of your students, some of your peers, they're going to be, essentially applying to loads of jobs. They're going to be posting about the opportunities or their own experiences. So I really recommend actually reaching out to the people that understand what you're going through and you can get that real community support. There was a student I saw, I think it was yesterday actually, someone called Jonathan, and he's basically posted the guide to LinkedIn. He's created his own personal document. It's like 30 odd pages. It's amazing. I'll see if I can get the guys to try and link it after this or put it somewhere, but really amazing stuff. And again, that's peer-to-peer. He created that not only for himself, but for his other students to say, here's a guide of how to use LinkedIn, how to connect and what to do. So I think there is a lot out there in terms of how you can use your network and what you can get out of it, really. What are your thoughts, Gabby?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think also like doing research about who you're contacting as well and how you want to present yourself on these profiles. For example, on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you've got your profile picture up to date and you're constantly posting things. So recruiters or employers can see you're interested and you're trying to get yourself out there and build your personal profile. So when you do go and reach out to a recruiter or to a business, then when they look on your profile, they've got a lot to look at, so they know what you're interested in, if you have a tagline, etc. So it's definitely, you can start utilising it as soon as you've got all your profiles ready.
Yeah, I'd also echo making sure you smile. That profile picture, it goes a long way to have a headshot where you're happy. Don't do the selfie angle. Like any student on this webinar, please do not do the selfie angle for a LinkedIn picture.
Or in a bar with an arm around you.
Yeah, or mates around you. Please get your mum or your friend or a lecturer, I don't care who, get someone to help you get a headshot against a white background or something that looks clean and professional. It makes a really big difference.
Yeah, I think with I mean, LinkedIn's a huge topic in itself, isn't it? I mean, I know from the start when I was at university, I knew it was probably important, but I didn't quite know why and didn't.
Yeah, I feel you.
Really. But I mean, from my background before coming into this role is recruitment through and through. So I've been in-house agency and RPO, and one thing that recruiters look for are sort of keywords as such. So in that summary section that you've got at the top, really good thing to do is make sure that's keyword rich. So think about the words that might come up in a job spec or that relate to you and what it is you're trying to look for in an opportunity. Get as many of those keywords into that summary as you can. It means that when recruiters are searching, looking on LinkedIn for different profiles they want to connect with, you're coming up. Exactly. And I think it's something I didn't realise or understand until I came into recruitment. I thought, oh, that's how it works, right? Yeah.
Anyway. I'm really sorry about that, folks, but I could just say apologies on my end. It's our day for it.
Just been discussing about LinkedIn a little bit.
Yeah, so that's great. Thanks very much for continuing the conversation, and I'd like to apologise to the attendees for the abrupt disruption in service. So yeah, obviously the conversation moved on to LinkedIn, and it's a key part of our agenda here. And I mean, I know what I just came back in, Emma, as you were sharing your own thoughts. Is there anyone else in the panel who'd like to just pick up on that, because I wasn't quite sure where you were going with the conversation? Apologies.
No, I think it'd probably be good now to actually, I suppose, summarise what is online networking, because as Emma's just said, I remember as a graduate that you are hammered home at university, at college, at every point in your life. Get LinkedIn, have a digital presence. It's really almost rammed down your throat a little bit, but you don't understand why. And I think, I suppose, coming on to that perspective of what is online networking and why do we bother, I think that would be a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know before that interruption, Emma was speaking about how you start building that network. So, and we were talking about the various platforms, and I know prior to going live here, you're talking about the different platforms that are particularly suitable for particular industries. If you want to share your thoughts on that, Oriana, I know you mentioned GitHub, and I mentioned Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah, I think social media channels, it really depends on your purpose and probably the field that you're going into. So there's a whole host of channels out there, whether it's Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. My God, they're just getting bigger and bigger. But what you've really got to hammer home is, what is the purpose? You know, what do I want to get out of this? And I think if it's personal, that's fine. We've got to make sure we lock that down. So I know from my perspective, my Instagram's private. I don't want people knowing what I'm up to, because that's my private life, you know, that's to me. But when it comes to work, I want people to see what I'm doing. So I personally use LinkedIn because I find it the staple, your bread and butter of online networking. But let's say if you're going into the tech space, there's something called GitHub, and you can have a bit of a kind of digital portfolio. It's around coding. You can support other people's code. You can submit your own. So it's like its own little community in its own social channel. There's also something else called Unicode, which is launching this September. It's almost like a coding league table for different university students. So again, technology's got its own piece. Let's say you're going into marketing, TikTok. TikTok has blown up massively. And if you use it right, it can have a positive impact. Same for Instagram. So I think really think about the job you're going into. If you're going to be an engineer, do they really want to see videos of you doing TikTok videos, prancing around? Probably not. But if you're going into, say, a marketing role, that could be applicable to show your engagement, your following. So I suppose it's just what's fit for purpose, in my opinion.
And Gabby, I mean, that's a very good point already made there about kind of horses for courses, I suppose. If you're going into the visual arts section, maybe Instagram, GitHub for the more tech or engineering. For your own particular, I mean, obviously LinkedIn is that's kind of a given, I suppose, that because it is the kind of accepted professional network. But any other interesting, candidates you've had who have had, good things via social media channels that you may not have expected, or that would not be normal?
I guess for us, like you say, like LinkedIn is more where professional services or like financial services do networking. Doesn't mean to say that we don't have profiles on like social media like Instagram we've got and Facebook, etc. So there are opportunities to reach out on there. And there might be a good way if you want to be a little bit different, maybe to reach out on those sort of social media channels instead. But really, most of our stuff is LinkedIn wise and a little bit more professional. So just bearing in mind, like, look at what each business uses the most and what they post on the most and what they like network on with other colleagues on the most, and then just going with that one.
Okay, and with LinkedIn, as you just mentioned there, getting the introduction right. I mean, we all know how it happens at LinkedIn. You get the invite, and some people accept every invite you get. It's not that hard to reach this kind of 500 plus connections. Will you speak to 470 of them again? Who knows? When you're trying to build your network, is it and I'll direct this your way, Emma, maybe, is it mass at first in order to build contacts in a particular area, or do you think it's more appropriate to focus on a particular tier of maybe management or your peer group? And sorry, just a quick thing here, because I see the questions are streaming in. We are factoring time in for questions at the end of this session. Excuse me.
I think what you've got to consider is what you want to get out of that network and relationship that you're building. So I sort of see it on a scale. One end of the scale is quite your high touch, maybe a one-off connection where you're just trying to get some key information to build your path of where you want to take it further. Down at the other end of the scale could be very much a two-way relationship. You're both benefiting from knowing each other and being in each other's networks. And a lot more time and effort and quality goes into those one-to-one relationships. So in terms of who to reach out to, you sort of want to gauge where you're going to sit with that. Maybe one of the boards of KPMG on LinkedIn, probably not going to be that two-way relationship, thinking about where you are, in your stage of life. But then again, if there are current graduates where you want to find out a bit more about what it's really like working for some of these companies, reach out to them, ask for their experiences, and you can build upon that. Similarly, depending on the industry you want to go into, there's somewhere the recruiters are there and have roles ready and want to bring you in. So speak to the recruiters directly. I think it's really thinking about what outcome you want to get from that relationship and determining from that which level you want to reach out to.
Okay, and Oriane, say if someone has completed their undergrad or perhaps just completed a postgrad, and within that time there's been a change of path in terms of where they want to go with their career. For them, they can have a LinkedIn profile that's very much focused on their previous career path as such. Any advice on how you kind of change the direction of building your network, which kind of can be awkward? Say you're moving from, I don't know, maybe professional services towards marketing or the other way around. Any advice on, how you start leveraging contacts in a new area? Should you always include a note, for example, if you're trying to get in touch with someone on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, actually, and I'm experiencing that myself at the moment. So I actually changed jobs during lockdown. So I've been working remotely this entire pandemic. I know exactly how that feels. But I've gone from a kind of accounting industry into Experian, which is so broad. We, do technology, data, credit. There isn't any end of the spectrum that isn't covered, really. So I'm experiencing that myself now, that my network is a lot of kind of accounting and IT. That was my specialism prior. I'm now in this kind of full 360, really broad spectrum. So I think when you're trying to build your network, what you've got to do is just be really open and honest. So let's say hypothetically, I'll use your example. Let's say I was a marketing student and I now want to go into IT as a random example. What you've got to remember is those marketing people you're connected with previously, that doesn't mean they're not of value. So don't start binning those existing people off and thinking that there isn't value there. It's just what you do from there needs to focus on that new audience and being a bit open-minded. So I would openly, if it were me, connect with people that I think are of interest. So anyone that has any posts that are getting a lot of engagement, anyone that's seen as a credible, respectable, kind of key leader in that field, I'd want to connect with them, because their posts will give me advice that will help me just in general. Anyone who comments on their posts, I might then connect with them, engage with them. And I think depending on who it is, depends on whether you need to send a note or not. So it comes back to my original point. If it's of your peer group, if it's someone similar to your level, I don't think a note is always required, because you can see a graduate and go, oh yeah, you're a graduate, I'm a graduate, let's connect, fine. But if it's someone more senior, then you might want to send a note and say, hi, I've been in the marketing field, I'm about to step into IT, I'd love to branch out my network, I could really appreciate, being connected to someone like you and getting your advice and seeing the posts that you post. It's not always about, can you message me with all the answers to these 10 million questions I'm about to bombard at you? Actually, just being connected to the right person and seeing what they post and learning from them through their natural, I suppose, channel is massively valuable.
Okay. Some great points there, Oriana. I think just moving on the same broad issue, Gabby, in terms of what the etiquette is, I suppose, there's a lot of uncertainty around now, obviously, with people's positions with internships and jobs. And if they're fortunate enough to perhaps receive an interview invitation, and they're doing their research and they come across the MD or the marketing manager or the CFO of a particular company, and they may feel, well, maybe I've connected with them, I can, it might help me with the interview. But is there a point where you kind of would go, maybe that's something you do after the interview, or maybe that's something you do, maybe it's something you do well in advance of even applying for it? Or what's your own thoughts on the etiquette of, how close should you kind of get to a company in which you may want to work before you've had the chance to meet them, albeit virtually these days?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you have to think about, say you're thinking about applying, I think the person you'd want to reach out to would probably be the graduate recruiter of the role that you're interested in, or maybe even another graduate who's on the program currently, to get a little bit more information and background about what is involved in the program and the application process looks like before you even start. And then reaching out to the recruiter to do a little introduction so you're on their radar as well. I don't know. If you want to go to the CEO or the CFO, you're probably not going to get a response, in all honesty, because they probably get hundreds of emails a day and they just pass them off to, say, other employees. Whereas if you go straight to the graduate recruiter or a graduate, they have much more time and much more knowledge about the process and what you're getting into than, say, the CFO would.
Okay. And Emma, and you mentioned the emails there, Gabby, it brings me on to another thought. LinkedIn Premium, I mean, I know the LinkedIn will constantly fish for you to sign up to Premium free, and then it's 30 days. And let's face it, how many of us put that down on our calendar to cancel on day 29? We often forget. Next thing you're hit with €20, £20 per month. Is it worth it, in your opinion, Emma, for graduates and students to be signing up to LinkedIn Premium? And if it is worth it, are there any particular industries it's maybe worth it for, or any particular circumstances you're in, it may be worth it?
Sure. I mean, from my experience in terms of being on both ends of the spectrum, looking for jobs in myself, and then also being a recruiter looking to fill my roles, for me personally, no, it's not been worthwhile in terms of looking for a job. Quite often you can still connect, you can follow certain industries and influential people. Those graduates we said to reach out to, the recruiters, you can do all of that with a free profile. The benefits you get from LinkedIn doesn't outweigh what you've got to pay for the premium. You can still get that by far with the free version. I guess one thing to add for that is that some recruiters or some companies won't necessarily pay for their premium profile, in which case it limits how much they can send emails or contacts to certain people on LinkedIn. If you want to help get around that, put your email address in your bio, put your contact information in there so it can be read by anybody with a free profile and they can contact you regardless of whether they've got that premium version or not.
Okay. Oriana, would you be the same view, or Gabby, on LinkedIn Premium? Should not?
Yeah, very similar. I think what I alluded to earlier, and at the end, I'll see if I can get the link for you. I mentioned there was a graduate that's basically just created this 30-page guide to LinkedIn himself. It basically covers everything, but it also covers those 4 different packages and the payment, the cost, what you get for it, what the benefit is. And I think it does just come down to purpose. I think early on as a graduate, you probably don't need it. I think maybe 2 years into your career when you're wanting to make a move, it could be of value if you want to target specific companies. Or equally, if you've graduated, you've exhausted every resource possible. You know, we are in a challenging time. If you are really finding it challenging and you have the, I suppose, financial commitment and availability, try it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but you don't need it to be successful, is my view.
And just to be clear, I suppose, as the kind of takeaway here is that you can do 95% of what you need to do on the free version. You can probably try the premium version for a month for free anyway, but the person you're trying to connect to can't see that you're a premium subscriber, can they? Or they're no more likely to accept your invitation if you're a premium subscriber. Would that be fair enough, Oriane?
Yeah, I'd say whether someone has that little LinkedIn kind of gold icon next to them or not, it's irrelevant to me. I'm not going to look at that and go, more valuable. I suppose it's more the context of the message. What do they want to get from it? What have they asked me? You know, what's the situation? And then take it from there. Yeah,
Gabby, would the same for you in the professional services area? It wouldn't have that much weight in terms of you more likely to look at a profile because it was a LinkedIn Premium?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make a difference to us. We don't actively look for that at all. So.
Okay. Pitfalls, there are many. And I know we were just talking about this before we went live as well, that things that can go wrong. And it just happened to me a few minutes ago as well. You know, you're on the interview that you're waiting for and something happens. The internet drops, you know, whatever, you spill a glass of water over your laptop. Hopefully not that dramatic, but where do you start in the retrieval process? I mean, Emma, what should you always have? Obviously, you'd be looking for the employer's phone number, someone you can call straight away, explain what's happened. If you can't, retrieve the interview straight away. And how understanding are employers considering the current uncertainties that students are facing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, talking to the interviewers, you know, like we were saying earlier, in the sense that people realise that each other are just people. And I think it's actually quite nice seeing that people are in their own homes, that the interviewers are in their own homes. Quite often now they're not in a full 3-piece suit that they might have been for an interview on one of the assessment days. So it instantly puts the other person, you know, the student and also the interviewer in a more relaxed scenario. And I don't know about any of you guys, but in some of our team calls, the dog jumps up, somebody else comes home from work, and these things happen, and that is life. You know, we're all human beings, and we all have home lives that we have. And I think in the past, before everything happened with lockdown, I think if anything happened on the news and it was a live interview and something bad happened, it was chaos and it would spread everywhere and it'd go viral. Now I think we're all pretty accepting of it, and I think if you're open and honest, same with my microphone at the first thing today, you know, sorry, I don't know why, but I've got an issue, but I'm back on, and carry on with it. So I think that's the case for anybody networking, interviews, whatever the scenario is. You just apologise, laugh about it, move on, and I don't think anyone takes, you know, blinks twice about it.
Okay, and Oriane, if the interview's been going particularly well, you know, and this happens, and you can't get back online, what should you do next?
I think it's kind of similar in the sense of you've just got to be honest and human about it. So drop them an email. If you've got their phone number, call them or text them or whatever, depending on how many people, just reach out. Just openly say, I'm really sorry, I'm having technical difficulty. I don't know why I can't get back in. Would you like to do a phone call instead? Or would you like to reschedule at a later date? I can do X, Y, Z. I think there's nothing wrong with admitting there's an issue. But I think if you can be proactive about a solution of how to resolve that, i.e. let's call, let's reschedule, that instantly paints a better impression.
And again, since we're here talking about online networking, it's so important to safeguard your network. And the fact that you've made a connection with an interviewer means they are part of your kind of broader network. You know, you have a professional contact with them. And even if the interview's not going great, I would envisage that it would be very good manners that you will still contact in the event of a problem, and, you know, make sure that whatever happens, you always would part on the best of terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether the interview's going well or let's say you've absolutely tanked it, it really doesn't matter. You want to show that courtesy because employers do that for all candidates, whether they're successful or not. We give feedback. We genuinely care about the people in the business that are, showing that passion, wanting to work for us. So I don't think there's any harm for candidates to do the same, and it's almost an expectation, I would say.
Okay, and Gabby, I mean, people always say about the preparation you do for an interview, and in the world of virtual and remote interviews and applications, that you need to test your internet, make sure there's a clean room behind you, things like that. But it can be just the way it is, that it will happen on the time when you're on the interview. But what sort of preparations would you always say if you could give someone a checklist for an interview, say tomorrow? What would you give them 5 or 6 things they should be doing today, both technically and professionally for themselves?
Yeah, so obviously I'd say prep for it as you would for a face-to-face interview. Just treat it exactly the same as you would. And like you said, make sure you've got internet connection, make sure your audio works, make sure your video is working beforehand. Make sure you're not going to be distracted. So if you've got other people in your house or if you've got flatmates, maybe just tell them, like, I've got this interview, it's going to take this long, just leave me alone, and try and be quiet for that long and try to shut yourself away in a room. If you can't get a completely clean background behind you, that's not an issue. Just make sure it's all neat and tidy. Dress-wise, I think you don't have to wear what you would for an interview, in that you wouldn't have to wear like shirt, tie and blazer, but maybe like just a shirt or a clean shirt or a blouse or something, just so you're slightly more professional, but you don't have to go full blazer, if you know what I mean. So they would be like my main things to do, and just, you can make notes and have like little bullet points if you want, but try not to be like reading off a piece of paper or something like that as well.
It's fairly apparent you do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned at the start of the session here as well about assessment centres, and I know KPMG's assessment centres were a thing to behold in a physical setting. A lot of people in an area for preparing them for the graduate programme. I know virtual assessment centres are now part of the world of professional services. What opportunities do they present for someone to build their network? I mean, you're still going to be interacting with graduate recruiters, you're still going to be interacting with your peer group, but it is difficult if you're one of these people who has a kind of a more outgoing personality. You were maybe looking forward to the assessment centre because you just feel you could put your personality forward. Or if you're someone who's a bit more reclusive, you think, well, maybe this might be easier for me. So for both personalities, if you could just maybe touch upon, and I'll go to Oriana and Gabby afterwards.
Yeah, sure. I mean, realistically, hopefully it shouldn't make too much of an impact, because you're still virtually face-to-face with somebody.
Still you, yeah.
Still going to be somebody just as senior. It's still going to be, I mean, for our process, it's going to be the exact same scenarios that you're going to be questioned on. The strengths that we assess against are all the exact same. What's really important for us is diversity and having a different range of people coming into our roles. I mean, all of our clients and the companies we work with are so varied in that we need our workforce to be as well. So we want the real you to come across. Yes, there are online stages to go through first time round, and yes, we have strengths that we look for because we need marking criteria, but all of this is still about getting the real you across. And I really do hope that being in your own home setting, being in a relaxed setting, you can get more of your personality across. Maybe for those that are a little more shy and not as forthcoming in maybe group scenarios, hopefully it makes it a lot better for you. It's a much more relaxed environment to be in. And those that usually shine through in those interviews, it's still an interview and you're still face-to-face with somebody of really high importance in the company. So hopefully it's a best scenario for everyone taking part. That's definitely the feedback we've had so far anyway.
Okay. Oriana, I'm not sure if Experian are running a virtual assessment centres, but in any sort of a online assessment, what are some pointers you'd have for the different personality types and how they can make the best of the situation?
Yeah, so we have run quite a few virtual assessment centres, obviously since the pandemic, okay, and we've shifted. But I think coming back to the question around the two different personality types, so exactly the same as kind of what Emma's just covered, that the process is exactly the same. I think the only thing that changes is how you feel in that process. And what I mean by that is, if you are a really outgoing character, you need to be aware that when you're on a virtual group exercise, there's lag, you can jump over each other, and it's a little bit harder, I will be honest. For example, all four of us now, if we said, what's your favourite cheese? And we started debating, it's really hard to, I suppose, get your point across, and you've got to get that balance between listening and speaking. In hindsight, I actually think it's going to help a lot of students because it forces them to slow down. I think when you're in a physical environment, it's easy to get into a debate and start really rallying your point across, whereas virtually, I think you have to pace yourself and be mindful of other people a little bit more. So it's not a bad thing, but I think for outgoing people, bear that in mind. For those that are a bit more shy, a little bit more recluse, you know, it's not their natural situation, try it with your friends, because whether it is virtual or physical, you do need to get involved. You do need to speak up. So if that's not your natural personality or it's not comfortable, practice makes perfect. Make yourself as comfortable as you can before, so that on the day you're willing to contribute. I think if you don't contribute, that tends to be quite a challenging point for recruiters, that if we can't see anything from a candidate, how do we know they're good for a job?
Okay, Gabby, thanks very much, Oriane.
Yeah, and I think if you struggle when you do speak, and say you speak at the same time as somebody else, then just be polite about it. Just say like, oh, okay, you go first, and then that will give you an in after they've spoken to say your point. So just make sure you're aware of how other people are feeling as well. It can, like we all said, be a difficult environment, but if you can practice with friends and family, then that is a really good idea, just to get used to the format and how the software works and everything. So just have like a good practice and try and be considerate, and don't look bored as well when other people are talking. Try and nod along, smile, like agree with their points if you do agree, and just try and treat it as much as you can as a real conversation.
And a very practical question, this is something that annoys me a lot. If I'm on Zoom calls and you see people, or if you're on group calls and they start messing around with virtual backgrounds,
yeah,
you know, you don't. If you're in you know, you got to be very careful with this sort of thing, obviously, in any sort of a remote assessment. So keep it simple. And if you have to do something like that, maybe just check it out beforehand that it's okay with the people that you're talking to. Yeah, would that be correct, Gabby?
Yeah, definitely, because they can be a bit wobbly, can't they? So
Yeah,
it's a bit
haven't perfected it yet. Yeah, okay.
I think the option to blur your background is a safe one. If you're in a busy environment where you have lots around you, if you don't have the luxury of a pretty background, blurring your background so it only focuses on you and your headshot, I think I would say is personally acceptable. That wouldn't faze me if I was interviewing someone who did that. I wouldn't even ask to do that. I think it's just when you get colours and jazzy backgrounds, maybe
the
not.
Golden Gate Bridge in the background is probably not where you are. Yeah, okay.
I think similarly as well is that we all are understanding that everybody is in their own rooms, and we're in a scenario where, I mean, I'm very lucky all my colleagues take the mick at me because I've got the KPMG blue background, which is not unusual, but it is. And you know, even if you are in your bedroom because that's the most quiet and your own safe space to have those sorts of meetings and calls, that's fine. And like Gabby said earlier, make sure it's tidy and presentable as best you can. But you know, we don't mind that there's real life in the background. That is the reality of what this lockdown has done, and I think everyone's just so accepting of it now.
Okay, and I can see the questions coming here, folks. We're just going to touch on one or two more points, and then we will get to the questions. Okay, and this is going to sound maybe a little bit retro, but email. Say if you want to get in touch with someone and you're researching online and you see their email address, and you know you send them an email. It's a speculative application. Do you have any part-time positions? Do you have any internships coming up virtually, or do you have any way I could shadow with someone on a project? How receptive are employers in terms of an online network built through an old-fashioned email? Oriane, your own thoughts on that? That's still something that someone would welcome if someone had the initiative, I suppose, to just email a polite, brief note.
I think I might be a bit controversial here, but we'll see how this lands. I think, again, it depends on the context. So a big pet peeve of mine is if someone emails or sends a LinkedIn message saying, hi, what jobs do you have available? And I think check the website. The website is where any live job will be. if you've done all your research and an opportunity isn't available, then yes, by all means say, hi Ariane, I've researched Experian Consumer Services. I like the software development side, would love to join, appreciate you're not open. Is there a register your interest network? Or can you keep your ear to the ground and let me know if anything crops up? I think that's completely appropriate. I think people that don't do their research and expect recruiters to just give them the answers is almost a little bit naive. So be proactive. And if there is a genuine reason for sending a speculative application, love it. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and Gabby, so if someone missed your milk round, your recruitment round, and send you a brief, polite email with their CV and a cover letter. I know most of your applications are obviously online. I mean, but you're likely to include that person if they're suitable in your forthcoming round, or at least give them the opportunity to apply.
Yeah, I think if they've done the research and say they've just missed out and they've found the role afterwards and been like, I'm really interested, this is my experience, this is why I'm interested in that kind of role, then we'll definitely sort of keep that candidate on file, say, so we can see like who was actually interested and proactive when we come to our next round. So there's no harm in doing that if you are really interested and you've just missed out maybe and you want to get your CV out there and start a contact and a dialogue as well. So definitely worth doing.
And just to finish with yourself on this, being able to write well. I mean, we're talking about social media platforms here, and it's great. You can take a great picture of yourself. You can shoot a cool marketing video of yourself, or you can display your coding on GitHub. But the ability to write well, it's a skill that employers do highlight as something that they feel can be lacking in some graduate recruits. And even if it just starts off with that brief introductory email, but because during the course of your career, you're going to need to be able to write clearly and concisely. And that really is the basis of building your online network, isn't it? Because it's all about how you communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think really you want to think about making sure the receiver understands why you're emailing in the first place. You know, whether it be, a message or an email, whatever contact it is, think about the purpose of reaching out and making sure the recipient understands that. So think about introducing yourself. Think about your USP, your unique selling point. You know, make sure they are going to read your message and understand why it is that you're reaching out. A good way to sort of build that instant connection is to engage with a question as well. So, you know, asking a little bit about, I noticed on the website you have these X, Y, and Z available. Is it going to be this in the future? I'm really interested in these other things. So trying to engage in that introduction and that email that you send across. And I mean, the great thing about being online is that you can have this all pre-prepared in a paragraph, copy and paste it straight across and send it. You know, yes, of course, tailor it to who you're sending it to, but with it being online, you can have that set and ready. Even if it is going to be a video or a telephone call, you've got your bullet points set and ready. So yeah, pull it together and practice it, and you can be able to utilize that then going forward.
Okay, I know, Ariane, you kind of started off that conversation well about what annoys you, but what would bother you in terms of a letter that you received or a speculative email that you received that was just literally, you know, where are the jobs, please? But how important is the concise, clear written word in terms of, you know, building your network and being able to establish the correct, you know, introduction to someone, the correct connection with someone?
Yeah, I think, again, it comes down to context and purpose, and it's really critical that if you're trying to build your presence online, you really need to think about that audience and almost not overstep. So we're living in a world where you've got professional and personal, and they do kind of blend, and we want that. We want real humans. But I think there is still a fine line between what you do and don't share. I mean, let's say, for example, you know, you're applying for a job, you want them to see you as respected, you know, credible or passionate and engaged. You don't want them seeing a video of you, you know, down in a footlong at Subway or 10 shops down at the pub. That's not appropriate. So you've really got to think about that professional boundary and what is acceptable. I think a good example for any of the students that are on this webinar, I'm hoping you're going to relate. Any of you that have Instagram, I guarantee some of the stories you post you hide from your family, because there are some things you just don't want them to see. So consider that when you're on social media from a professional side. If you're on LinkedIn, really think about, is this fit for purpose? You know, pause before you post. Why am I posting it? Is it authentic? Is it on the borderline of personal and professional? I think that would be the biggest point for me.
Okay.
Just to add to that as well, a lot of companies don't necessarily use searches for social media. It's not necessarily part of the recruitment process, but no one's to say that once you do join a firm, the client you're going to be going on that afternoon, they can do their own search as well. And at the end of the day, what you might have tweeted 3 years ago, is that really how you want to portray yourself now? So
yeah,
it might not be part of the recruitment process, but everybody's human, and whoever's involved in working with you and networking with you, down to them if they do end up doing that.
Okay. I've got a lot of questions here, and some of them will touch upon what we've talked about. So if you don't mind, I'll delve into them. And a lot of them are very LinkedIn specific. I know we talk a lot about LinkedIn, but that is the world we live in. So Gabby, if I put this your way, if you don't mind. And I suppose it's like the start of a CV, the bio. What makes someone's bio stand out on LinkedIn? Like, are you looking for experience? Are you looking for university, or are you reading the bio and go, okay, well, that has me maybe interested? What makes a good bio to you on LinkedIn?
It does depend what you're looking for from a candidate point of view. So if you're looking for graduate roles, then include like university graduate or on track for or whatever you're going to achieve. And then a little bit about what you're really interested in and why. Like, it doesn't have to be, we don't want loads of information, but just like short sentences. So if you are contacting a recruiter, or if they're looking for graduates, then they know exactly what you're looking for, exactly the kind of roles that you're interested in. And then if you can put a little bit of personal in there as well, that's great. You don't feel like you have to, but if you can, like we said, blend the two and say like a little interesting fact about yourself as well to make you stand out a bit more, and then someone's going to look maybe at your profile because of that if they're interested.
And do you have to, I mean, you know, the people you say, I'm looking for opportunities in, obviously if they've sent it to you, it's pretty obvious they're looking for opportunities, but if you're looking for someone else, do you think people should be revisiting their bio, and if they are thinking about a change, they should be updating their bio for that, or do you think that's a very minor point, Gabby?
Yeah, I think if
it makes your life easier, I suppose. At least, you know.
Yeah, I think if you want to sort of change it a little bit every now and then, like so it looks fresh and you keep it updated, and you might get different people looking at your profile at different times, then definitely you can change things. So yeah, it's just thinking about what exactly you want people to see on your profile and what you're looking for, and just think about that and how you're coming across to other people as well.
Okay, and Oriana, I suppose it depends on what, I mean, obviously we all have our own workloads and sometimes they're very busy, but if you're recruiting for a position and you've got a lot of applications and LinkedIn is part of the kind of screening process that you're going through, how long are you spending looking at a LinkedIn profile? I mean, we have a question here, just people are wondering what sort of a scan do you give these profiles, or, you know, I suppose it depends on the position, obviously the amount of applications, but any insider tips?
Yeah, it does depend on the volume and it depends on time. But if hand on heart, I'm being brutally honest, recruiters can scan over your CV and LinkedIn profile within a matter of seconds. And that's what comes with experience. So I think your profile needs to be really punchy. It needs to be very clear about who you are, what you're interested in, short and snappy. If that bio really captures someone's interest, they are going to read more naturally because they're curious. I think, again, a pet peeve of mine is there are hundreds of results-driven, motivated graduates, but that tells me nothing about the person. You know, I want to know if you fell out of a tree when you were 4 and that made you resilient, and, you know, there's ways to do it. So I think reality is you've got to hit it off the mark, be short, snappy, punchy, make people want to read more about you.
Okay. Emma, any thoughts on that? What makes a profile stand out to you? We'll move on then from LinkedIn.
Sure. I mean, I think you need to decide what you want to get from your profile as well. So how we were mentioning earlier, if you are initially in marketing and you wanted to change to IT, I think you should tailor your profile to what it is you want to achieve at that time. So some of the experiences you might put in, I mean, we've all had crazy jobs over the years working in bars and shops and restaurants, but if they're relevant and you've got some real key achievements that show certain strengths and certain benefits to you as a person, get those in there. We don't want to see the job experience that you have and then just responsibilities dotted like a job spec. We want to know about you and what impact you made in that job. So get in there any key achievements you have, any strengths, but also to sort of tailor that to the industry or the sort of job that you want to go for.
Okay. And again, I have some very specific questions here. I know it's a time of particular uncertainty for international students who may have had internships or job placements, cancelled or deferred. In terms of what they can do, are there any source of information? Are there any kind of tips you may have for them in terms of what they may have been able to do in a more normal year that maybe they can look to do? Oriane, any advice for international students?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people looking for placement years this year, they're going to struggle, and they might have had them pulled. They might no longer be available. So I think in that third year, if you just go straight onto your final year at uni now, it's going to be hard because obviously that's the year that everything counts. But I think you need to dedicate time to doing things like online courses. So there's a load with Future Learn, the Open University, LinkedIn. There's a host of online free courses that give you a certificate, and you can then link that on your CV and on your LinkedIn profile. So I think if you're unable to get that 12-month placement, try and do any free courses to show those transferable skills that you haven't been able to get from an employer. Still try and source opportunities with employers, but be prepared. You need to have that resilience because a lot of companies are struggling just as much. They're not able to give as much as they were previously. So if you get rejected, the answer is no. You've got to be resilient enough to bounce back because it's not personal. We're all in a really challenging place. And I think the last thing is just getting prepared for that graduate year. So making sure that those graduate jobs, when they go live, you're ready, you're able to apply, your CV's, freshly done. It's not like you're on the back foot. I think those three things will help people get ahead of the curve.
Okay, Oriane, that's great practical advice. Thanks very much for that. Gabby, question here about CVs that come in. Do you have any tips and advice about how you tactically structure your CV when applying for internships and placement years? I suppose what kind of stands out. I mean, you may not have much experience, and you want to try to make the best of what you have and what you've done. How different are CVs or applications viewed for internships or placements than there would be for full-time positions? And any tips you may have?
Yeah, I don't think from our side they shouldn't be structured any differently from a general CV. So you say you have your little personal blurb at the top, and then your education maybe first, and then your work experience, and then like any volunteering or achievements that you have under that. I think in terms of when you're applying for internships, just make sure that you tailor it to the company you're applying for. So in that bio, you want to say why you want to apply for that internship, why that company, what's motivated you to apply to that specific role, and just making sure you tailor it to each internship that you apply for. And also, if you look at the job role and the job spec, if there are key skills and that the company want and key achievements, then make sure that they're reflected in your CV. So if they want someone who's got great attention to detail, make sure you put that in your CV and just try and reflect those skills as much as possible in the experience that you have, whether it's your educational experience and what you've learned from that, or whether it's any work experience or volunteer roles or even online courses or webinars that you've attended as well.
Okay. And we're getting other questions here that I know they've gone from online networking to pretty much job applications, but listen, once we can provide some help, I think we'll keep the conversation going. Emma, virtual internships, with a question here, like, should I take one? Is it really going to help me in terms of my my CV, my experience for future applications? I mean, I presume the answer would be yes. If you have an opportunity to take a virtual internship, you should do it because it will stand to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, an opportunity is an opportunity, and all I say is grasp it with both hands. The employers hosting these will want you to get the same experience out of it, whether it's face-to-face or virtual. So in the background of them trying to get together this crazy virtual internship, they're wanting to make sure you get the same experience out of it at the end. Another benefit is that quite often a lot of internships might lead straight onto a graduate position. I mean, for ours, there's not another interview stage process. It's It's looking at who's come in and then offer a graduate scheme for the next year, and you're set and ready before you've even graduated. So to turn down that opportunity just because it's virtual, it wouldn't make sense to. So if you've got that opportunity, grab it, go with it. Okay,
thanks very much. Oriane, we have a question here about verbal and numerical reasoning tests, that whole kind of psychometric piece. And I know I might be putting you on the spot here, but you've been great at coming up with resources that have helped students like GitHub and other ones. But what any tips you'd have for kind of cracking those, or performing well at those sort of tests?
Yeah, so I do actually know of more resources. I don't know how. I just seem to have come across lots in my lifetime. If you're going after kind of a situational judgment test, now this is more of a behavioural test that measures, does your natural personality fit our company? Because each company is different. So if I applied for a suited and booted firm in London, it wouldn't fit me. That's not who I am. So there are ways you can tailor it. There's something called the Red Bull Wing Finder. If you Google that, it will give you a free personality kind of test. It will tell you more about who you are as a person, and it will really help you understand your natural.
Can I just get that name of that again? I'm just going to type it into the reply here.
Yeah. So Red Bull Wing, like wings, Finder, and it will give you a PDF passport that will tell you about who you are as a person and your natural strengths. So if you're not self-aware, please sit that test, because it will help you become more aware of who you are. It will then help you with applications and some of those judgment tests, behavioural competencies. And what you've got to remember is who you are as a person is not going to change. I wouldn't fit a corporate firm necessarily. I need that human element. So that's the kind of more personality side. On the ability, verbal, numerical, which is your original question, I'll come back to it. I think SHL, they have a lot of free practice assessments. A lot of other companies actually offer free versions of it. So if you go on certain companies' websites, they'll allow you to sit a mock version of it. Practice makes perfect. Definitely keep hammering at it. But equally, again, controversial, but I'll say it.
Go on.
I think companies have their own process, and if for any reason you don't make it through their verbal, numerical, whatever it is they have set up, that's their loss and it's for their reason. I think there are certain cut-off points, and what you have to remember is certain jobs require certain technical abilities, and that's not to diminish people. A key example, I'm terrible with numbers. Oh my God, if you play darts with me, I cannot calculate what the numbers are and how much I've taken off. So if I tried to be an accountant, it would not work, because that's not my natural strength. So I think be comfortable with who you are, what you bring to the table and what you're good at, and really own that. There's nothing wrong with saying you're not good at something. That's okay, but practice to try and get ahead of the curve and take it from there. Okay,
and just, well, I remember there's also a thing called the Graduate Benchmark, which is on targetjobs.co.uk or on our site gradireland.com, which is it's the same aspects covered as well. So, Oriane, thanks for that. Much appreciated. Gabby, hard and soft skills, how do recruiters weigh them up? Like, are they more likely to take on someone who is technically has it nailed and we'll get them to be a better communicator, or her? Or, they seem like really sort of person I want to work with on Monday morning, we'll teach them the technical bit. How do you kind of weigh up the two of them?
I think it entirely depends on the role that you've applied for. So say we do have some more like technical and actuarial roles. They might look more for, if you're really good at numbers and maths and things like that, that might be a really high thing, and they can teach you some more soft skills. Whereas if we had like more of a client facing role, then if you're not good at like Excel, for example, like we'd say we can teach them that. If they can like talk to people and they have good communicative and interpersonal skills, then that's fine. Like we can teach the rest. So it does depend what role you're going for. So just bear that in mind, like building up, everybody can build up their soft skills. Like you might as well in this time. There's lots of things you can do, like online courses and things like that, to boost those basic skills. So when you get to that stage, you won't have to worry about having one weaker than the other.
Okay. And listen, folks, we are being snowballed here with questions. So post the webinar, I will attempt to answer as many of them as I can as possible via message, okay? Because we are literally at near the end of the webinar here. But I just want to ask one more question your way, Emma. If someone has just graduated and has no work experience, that they haven't been able to get any work experience, their last year in university was, let's say, it's truncated and probably quite chaotic. Any tips you can give them to gain practical experience in a pandemic world, I suppose? Where do you go about getting some sort of experience? Because all experience is good experience mostly. So any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a benefit of a lot of graduate roles is actually quite often they won't expect you to have a certain level of experience. That is what they're designed for you graduating fresh out of university. So I wouldn't say it's the be all and end all. So I wouldn't worry yourself if you find yourself in a position where you can't get that experience. I think the main thing is being able to draw upon those strengths and those experiences you might have had throughout university, in your extracurricular careers, and events that you might have taken part in. Any work experience you can get are going to give you prime examples of when you might have to have been resilient, when you might have had to work in a team, show leadership. So I think any experience that you can get is great. Reflect on that and think about what you can draw out from those experiences for when you do apply for these roles. But all in all, I would say don't fret and worry if you feel like there's nothing out there that's relevant to the information and the jobs you're trying to get, because it's not the be all and end all. There's so much more to you as a person that you can bring to our roles.
Okay, great. And Oriane, just the last question here, and I know we've obviously discussed LinkedIn so much, but people just wonder, is it only LinkedIn that you're using to go out and find candidates? I know obviously it's not quite the case. You obviously have your own professional networks, you have your own people that would refer people to you, and obviously internally there's obviously a network organically through that. But can you just give a reassurance that it's not, LinkedIn is not the be all and end all in terms of how you would go and source clients, or maybe?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is one tool. There are obviously multiple job boards, multiple sites. Obviously, we're with you guys today, which is a prime example. You will obviously have your own university network. So your university careers portal will have its own engagement with employers. So LinkedIn isn't the only place, but personally, things that are private, like your Instagram, your Twitter, your TikTok, I don't care about that. I don't want to see people's private life. I want to see their personal, professional blend, not the full-on personal. So for me, LinkedIn is a good tool. Invest in it. But if you don't, or you're not comfortable, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. You could still get jobs and source opportunities. It just means you might not have as much information as other people. That's the only difference.
Okay, and Gabby, just the last one here, because it is an interesting question and one we get asked a lot is, and I think it's diminishing, I know it definitely is here in Ireland, but in terms of in the UK, like, does it matter what university, what sort of, I mean, I know for specific roles, I know employers do like specific courses, they do like specific degrees that have been studied. Do you think that's something that is diminishing in terms of importance, or is it still highly important depending on the industry? What's your own closing thoughts on that?
I think from our point of view, we don't look for certain universities, or the majority of our roles, we don't look for certain courses either. That's just from our side. I don't know if other firms are possibly different. Like obviously if you need some qualifications, need like an engineering role, but I'd hope that they would take somebody who's got a great engineering role from any university that applied rather than a set number of universities. So we try and partner with as many universities as we can, from all ranges and all locations.
So I suppose you should have confidence in your degree, no matter where you've got it from, and that it is providing you with the skills you need. We're over time at this stage, and I will have to just bring the webinar to a close. As I said, we will get to as many of your questions now as we can throughout the rest of the afternoon. So I will send on some answers to you all, and as many as I can anyway. Listen, I'd like to thank our panelists, and sorry for brief technical hitches, but I think we've had a good wide range of discussions. And thanks to Gabby Sewell from Marshall McLennan, to Oriane Whiteman from Experian, and to Emma Jenkins from KPMG. Thanks so much for your time and for taking the time to answer so many broad questions. And I know we kind of went through a lot of different areas there as well across the whole job application thing. But in a very uncertain time like this, I think it's some very great practical advice provided today. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn after this as well, please do. I understand there are some follow-up questions, so I'll try and help where I can within reason.
That's great. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.